Hello students, today we are going to begin with the first poem of class 12th curriculum, that is My Mother at 66. So before we begin the chapter, we'll study about the poet. So Kamla Das is a poet. She was born in Malabar in Kerala. So she is recognized as India's foremost poets. Now, what is the meaning of foremost? Foremost means prominent. Okay, her works are known for their originality. Okay, versatility. Now, what is the meaning of this word? It means that her poems had different themes, or maybe it talks about different topics, so it's not oriented over the same thing. So versatile means having different theme. Like for a poem we can say that different themes, right, revolving around different subjects. Okay, and indigenous flavor. Now of course she was a South Indian people are very proud of their culture. They take pride in their culture. So so she was also one of the South Indian, and her poems reflected that flavor, that indigenous flavor of the soil, of the South Indian soil. Kamla Das has published many novels and short stories in English and Malayalam under the name Madhvi Kutti. Okay. In addition to 5 books of poetry, she is a sensitive writer, and you will come to know about this when you will read this poem, who captures the complex subtleties of human relationships. Now, while you study this poem, you will realize why these lines have been written over here. Subtleties of human relationship in lyrical idiom. My Mother at 66 is an example. Obviously, this poem is a big example that she is such a sensitive writer, and she draws those intricacies of the human relationship in such a beautiful way, which this poem will already tell you. Okay, now before you read, aging is a natural process. Have you ever thought what your elderly parents expect from us? Okay, so obviously our parents accept love, care, company from us. It's just love and care, obviously, right? Now let's begin with the poem. Now this poem is about a girl, which is Kamla Das. Okay, she is leaving her mother. Probably she is going abroad, she is going to some other place via airplane, and she with her mother is going to the airport. Okay, and she is describing her emotions, what was her feelings at that moment when she was leaving her mother, probably for the first time. Okay, and what she could infer from her mother's expression, from her mother's old condition, all such things are described in the chapter. Okay, driving from my parents home. Now we'll go with the surface level meaning and the deeper level meaning side by side. So I'll first explain you the surface level meaning and then the deeper meaning. So driving from my parents home to Cochin last Friday morning, I saw my mother beside me. Okay, driving from my parents home. Now can you see this word, parents home? Now when we generally write parents, what do we write? We write, right? So why has she omitted this S? Probably the poet's father has already passed away in her childhood, so she only has her mother left with her. That is why she has written parents home to Cochin. Now, why is she going to Cochin? She is going to Cochin last Friday morning. She has to take an aeroplane because she is going to some other place. Okay, and the reason is not mentioned, probably for higher education or for for some job. It may be anything. I saw my mother beside me. Doze. What do you mean by doze? Doze means asleep, open mouth. Now this is generally how old people sleep. They sleep with their mouth open. Okay, her face ashen like that of a corpse. Now, what's a corpse? A corpse is a dead body and realized with pain. Now, what did the poet realize with pain? This is the most asked question in your examination. What did the poet realize with pain? Now, while she was driving from her home to Cochin, she saw her mother, and was she there was a sudden pain, sudden ache, and that was of the approaching death of her mother. This thought, this idea came to poet's mind, which she realized, what the realization was actually, that her mother was as old as she looked, and as she was asleep her face looked as if she was dead, and suddenly she realized with pain that her mother was very old and her death was approaching. Okay, she realized it with pain. Now, that she was as old as she looked. Okay, this is the answer of the question. What did she realize with pain? When she was driving from her home to Cochin, her mother's home to Cochin, she saw her mother's face. At a glance, it looked ashen like that of a corpse. It looked like a dead body. And you will not write dead body, because it's not appropriate. You will exactly write the same statement. It looked ashen like that of a corpse, and the poet realized with pain that her mother was as old as she looked. And and what was the pain? If the question comes, what was the pain? The pain was of her approaching death. Now, in order to put that thought away, now she tried to distract herself. She had this idea, and now she wanted to distract herself. She looked at young trees sprinting and merry children spilling. Now, this is something that you need to know. This is one of the best example of creativity that we often find while reading these literary pieces. Now you can see here it is written, young trees sprinting, merry children spilling. Sprinting is the work of some living being, okay, and spilling is the work, is an activity associated with non-living things. Okay, now you already know, whenever a non-living thing is personified, it is called as personification. Okay, how is this personification? Young trees are sprinting. Sprinting means running. Sprint race, marathon, you already know that. So young trees are sprinting. Why they are sprinting? Because you already know that they are in a car. So when they were traveling, you know that the trees were rushing backwards, and they seemed to be sprinting, like running. Okay, and merry children spilling. Do you use the word spilling for people? No, you don't. You say that the milk spill. Okay, and you say beans spill, don't spill the beans. Okay, but do you ever say that the children were spilling? So she uh, personified the trees, and she objectified the children. And whenever a quality of non-living beings is given to a living being, it is called as, this poetic device is called as chromomorphism. And I would like all of you to write it in your copies, in your books. It's O, okay, it's O over here. Chromomorphism. Okay, so this is a very prominent poetic device over here. Children spelling is chromomorphism. Okay, now trees is sprinting and Mary children spelling. Now can you see a contrast over here? Earlier she was talking about her mother who was old. She was looking like a dead body. She was looking like that of a corpse. But now she is talking about trees sprinting and Mary children spilling. Now there's another prominent poetic device, that is contrast. So you will write three poetic device over here. Three poetic devices over here. Trees sprinting, this is personification. Merry children spilling, chromomorphism. Then again there is a contrast between the scene inside the car and the situation outside the car. ठीक है, अब एक prominent poetic device that is carried out, that is extended throughout the poem, that is imagery. There is no need for me to mention that there is imagery, because generally you will find imagery everywhere. So whenever she's talking about trees sprinting, now you can imagine the trees rushing away from the car, going backwards, so you can see the trees running, right? You can imagine them. So visual imagery is prominent everywhere. Okay, Mary children spelling, they were coming out of their houses. They were also running, but they were coming out of their houses. So Mary children spelling, now out of their homes. Now what does this signify? Trees sprinting, Mary children spelling, why does she mention them all out of a sudden? So they represent, so you should mention these things that they represent. Pehla is energy, okay? Then life, then fleeting time. The sprinting trees can also be a symbol of fleeting time and life. Okay? Then youth. अंदर क्या है? There is old mother, and बाहर she is representing youth full of energy and life. Okay? Now out of their homes, but after the airport's security check, standing a few yards away, I looked again at her, wan and wan pale. Now she went to the she went inside the airport, and after the security check she was standing few yards away, and she saw her mother again. Okay, and this time she looked at her again, and she saw her face was wan and pale, means blur. It was tired, it was dull, it was weak. Okay, now whenever two things are used simultaneously to describe the same thing, it is called as tautology. Here wan and pale refer to the same thing. What do they refer to? Tiredness, dullness, weakness. So wan and pale both are used to describe the old age of the mother. So here the prominent poetic device is tautology. Okay, so her face was weak, dull. Okay, then tired. Now, as a late winter's moon, she was very old, and how beautifully she compares her to the late winter's moon, because it was blur, right? It was blur, it was pale. Moon is yellow in color, right? Now, and due to, and winter is used here, late is used because she was old. Winter, because winter में fog होता है, and it everything becomes blur, so it is used to show the, just to describe the old age of the mother. Familiar ache, now that is why I stressed on the word parent. Now here again there is a word familiar ache. Why has she mentioned this the word familiar ache? Has she already experienced it? My childhood fear. It was her childhood fear. So familiar ache here, use of this phrase indicates that she has already experienced. What is this ache? It's ache of separation. Okay, this ache is ache of separation, and this is her childhood fear. So probably her father had already passed away when she was a child. So this was her childhood fear. She never wanted to lose her mother. Okay, but all I said was, see you soon, Amma. Okay, now why is she using the statement, she is using the phrase see you soon? She is using this to assure that this is not their last meeting. Okay, she will come back. Now then we have the last statement, all I did was smile, smile and smile. Now there is a repetition. Again, a poetic device is used here, repetition. What is this poetic device? When same word is used again and again, just to uh, to multiply the intensity of that word, this poetic device is used. Now here she says, I all I did was smile, smile and smile. Now this smile can have two implications. One, shows her helplessness, which is the most prominent, which you will write first of all when the question comes. She was helpless, she could do nothing but smile. Okay, she did not want to leave her mother. Okay, but why did she smile? It was an attempt to hide her pain and apprehensions. So she smiles because it was her attempt to hide what she was feeling. She tried to cover that pain with her smile so that her mother could not, what? She could not uh, feel that the poet herself was feeling guilty of leaving her mother at such an old age, and having some pain due to this separation, because her mother would be left out. So this was all about this poem, and there is one important thing that is mentioned in this box which you should not leave. Notice that the whole poem is in a single sentence punctuated by commas. Now, what does this suggest? It indicates a single thread of thought interspersed with observations of the real world around and the way these are connected to the main idea. So there is one main idea which runs through the poem, but there are several observations which are which are which are used throughout the poem, which are hence connected to the main idea of the poem. So this was all about this beautiful poem, and I have discussed all the possible poetic devices which may come from this chapter, and I need not tell you the poetic devices like simile and simile, because whenever you will see as, like here, as late winter's moon, so you can obviously infer that it's simile. Okay, so this was all about the poem, and we'll cover the next poem, that is keeping quiet, in the next video.